external handlers, one of the destination service, and the other things we will cover after. Or let's do it. Let's do it at the moment, and then we'll let's say briefly leave the topic and reuse it after the deployment. So, what is the couple of terms I would like to introduce now? It's the BTP connectivity service itself that consists of two parts: connectivity service and destination service. So this is again a service which sits in BTP platform. So why do we drift away now to this specific topic? Well, first, because it's in the decks at this very moment, and the second thing, it's because we're going to use it for the next step for the deployments. So why do we need a destination service? It's basically data out and external information about the external system. So why wouldn't I just use why wouldn't I talk to the external system and shoot API calls and get some responses the way I just did it in the code at the moment? For a couple of reasons. The first thing is that anybody who did any real life projects knows that it's not really a smart thing to leave URLs in your code and replicate it for multiple times. For a couple of reasons, right? It's not just the replication, it's also that the URLs are, let's say, information that something that is very prone to changes, and it's also, let's say, sensitive information. You don't want to have that in the code. It's different between environments. You don't want to have a specific URL deployed from test to sandbox or from sandbox to production. So lots of different reasons for not to have your URL in the code. So this is where you need a destination service. And it's not only to remove URLs from the code, it's the destination service itself. It's not just the place BTP where you store the URL. It's also the where you store how you exactly communicate to that external web service. So you store credentials, and you store some additional information about the service over here in the service marketplace of where we were yesterday. If we connectivity itself is over here, so you can just activate the service. Here in my instances, I've created a single destination service I've created over here, and let me just show you what I have inside of it. So a single click, as always in the instances, takes me to the specific service. When that one loads, here is the destination service used to store data about the actual external destinations. I've created a destination over here. You're going to do it on your own also. Yesterday when I was testing this, how it works. So I've given it the name API Business Partner. If you remember the URL that we've used a couple of moments ago, I've stored the URL here, and I've just said that it's because it's public in the internet. In this particular case, I didn't use any authentication. So internet, no authentication at this point. Just the way to store a single destination. This is it. We're going to use that one, at which point, when we deploy our code to Cloud Foundry, because we need this one for the productive version of the code, not for the testing version, the way I did it a few moments ago with the URLs and CDS watch. So we are slowly, as you've seen, starting to prepare to have like all the utilities needed for deployment. What else I want to point out over here? Connectivity is used when? Connectivity is used for the on-premise version, because when you talk to an on-premise system, you need a bit more than just the actual destination itself. The decks you will get, and you can check the details if you're interested later on. I just want to go over here to this specific architecture that you will be reviewing a lot. Not the specific diagram, but of course the actual architectural principle. It's always going to be when you talk to an on-premise system, it's going to be an architecture like you will need the two components from the actual connectivity service over here. You will need that one on the side, the internet form, while on the other side, you have the on-premises data center. Over here, it's like S/4HANA in this particular example, in the client's data center. And you need a cloud connector component over here. So that's, again, an SAP component, subcomponent that you install in your data center. And as you already see from this diagram, the way that BTP communicates to the on-premises data center is actually the communication between these two components, the connectivity service and the cloud connector. One of the things that they do is that they establish secure over here. So, for example, VPN, if you have the two instances, that's you use the two components as the two ends of the tunnel. And a bit more. Just this whole thing over here, this whole diagram is just that you be aware of some architectural principle, which is very often going to be present almost always when you need to establish a communication to some on-prem system. The cloud connector, I mean, you can read about the software component itself. We said it runs as a link and an on-premise agent in a secured network, which is quite important. It gives like additional capabilities, like you can do audit logging and monitoring inside of the cloud connector itself. And it also has some features like high availability. Guys who do high availability and who deal with topics like that know what exactly it means. It's like, it's the, let's say, the architectural setup that enables some system to be available almost always, which usually means a couple of availability zones and that run simultaneously. And if one availability zone crashes, the other takes over. For us, important thing is that the cloud connector deals with also recovering broken connections automatically. So several features, all that you get by installing that single component in your on-premises system, and you make it available and capable to talk to something like BTP platform. Otherwise, it can be any type of software in that on-premise center that you have. I don't think I want to talk about anything else. I'm quickly progressing toward Unit 5. So we did all these things. We prepared the code. Now we're manual deployment. So what does this exactly mean? We were running our own system still inside of Business Application Studio in our testing environment. When finished that all, we want to have everything deployed to the actual dev space inside of Cloud. So I was here in my trial sub account. Again, if you pay attention to the Cloud Foundry spaces over here on the left side, you have spaces. If you remember, we created just a single space yesterday, Dushan Dev Space, that's how we called it. So if you click on this one, this is where you get all the services deployed to this particular dev space. So if you want to execute all these steps on your own afterwards, we definitely, as I said, never do it on the academies. We do not run the actual deploy. You will get something like this: the actual services. This is the deploy that I had problems with yesterday. The component, the service that is used to deploy data to HANA. But the service itself, you click on this one, and then you just access it. This is it. Deployed service will be listed over here in dev space. Now, what we're going to use this for we talk about the actual steps that we need to prepare something to be deployed. And because the infrastructure is going to look different in the actual for the productive version of our own app. So let's talk about the components that we need for the productive version of the app. Couple of things. The first thing is that we'll use HANA as the database. That's the first change that we have. So HANA itself, you need to activate. Over here, when we were in the sub account, in the services marketplace, HANA database, you would find in the market and just activate that. So it shouldn't be too many steps. It's basically just the HANA database, and you specify the actual dev space for which one this one is going to be tied to, and then give it a name. I've created a single instance, and then I'm not going to repeat that one again. When you do that, you get something which is over here in the left side menu, you get SAP HANA Cloud, and you can access the specific instance. You can do it in a couple of ways. For example, from your own trial account, as we always do it, instances and subscriptions. You will have the HANA listed over here. So any of the ways, just you get redirected to the portal, and there you can specify the actual parameters for the HANA database itself. So as I mentioned, in BTP, everything is a service. So you just activate HANA Cloud from the marketplace, of course, based on the actual entitlements that you have and the actual quota for that specific particular service, because you cannot use, for example, any amount of memory that you want. You use just what you have, the actual entitlements and quotas for the specific sub account. That's HANA Cloud. So this particular service over here that I've already instantiated, it's the HANA HDI containers that we need, schemas and HDI containers. So this is basically HANA deployment infrastructure. I think that's what it is short from. So the comma separated value files that you remember in the Business Application Studio that we used for initializing some data for a SQLite testing database inside of Business Application Studio. SQLite is of course used because of its lightness. It's exactly made for the purpose. So we use this way to initiate some data, of course, or if we want to deploy this, and if we want to have the data and everything set in the data model. Of course, you remember how we described it over here in the schema CDS. If we want to have this whole prepared for the actual HANA, and we need specific service which will automatically do that for us from our own project. Again, this one gets activated from the services marketplace itself. So go to the service marketplace. Again, just type in HANA schemas and containers, create. The plan over here is HDI shared, the one that you need for this specific instance. The others are different configurations. Again, our new service plan is just a pre-configured, let's say, configuration of the specific service, which is prepared. For example, the typical example when the service plans are described, it's like those t-shirt sizes for different services, like specific parameters and let's say capabilities which are pre-configured for that specific service. A specific configuration of the service prepared for some purpose. For us, it's going to be HDI shared. Cloud and our own dev space over here, because we have just a single one, and you use the name that you have over here. So for always, I will be repeating part of this exercise, you can do everything by UI like this. It's usually just create, and then you have a next step where you have some, if you want, you can specify additional behavior through some JSON parameter. You use the JSON example and you modify something. Pretty often you don't use this step at all. You just say create, and this is it. The end of your user, and this is just the review step. The last step is just that you review everything that you configured. As always, I'm not going to use it. I'm not, as in majority of cases, because sometimes I will use that. But pretty often I don't do that through UI. I just run some command, or I just use something which I already have in the environment pre-configured, usually from the day before when I was checking if everything is fine. So it's this particular line will do everything that I've done at this moment. So everything that I did in UI, you can execute by a single line if you run it from the terminal window over here. You can do it that way also. Again, it's up to you. So this line, and this is just a line that prepares our package.json file. Let me just see what is if I did the checkout over here. It should be the does it say? Yeah, number line. This is what I've skipped. Manual deployment. So git checkout number 9. Let's get all the code changes that we need. This will refresh soon while I just check what are the exact files that we've changed. So the first thing is the package.json. These are the things over here that we added to package.json that drive behavior of our own application, how exactly it's going to get deployed. For HANA over here, we have the deploy format. So each of those parameters, you can check what's the exact meaning in the documentation. For us, these very few things specify exactly how we want to deploy these components. We're going to talk about something like authentication and trust services afterwards, and the other components. But for us, package.json is just the first change. The key file for us, the one that describes the actual parameters for deployment, is the manifest YAML file. So let's click on this one. You'll probably notice that we have 2 steps, manual deployments in 2 flavors over here. One is manifest YAML, the other one is, somebody probably already noticed in text that we had the step 11, a different type of manual deployment with MTA file. We're going to cover both now. So the first approach, manifest YAML, this is something that comes from Cloud Foundry itself. It's that's the inner mechanism of Cloud Foundry. You basically have a single manifest file that describes all individual services that need to be deployed to Cloud Foundry. This is the whole file in our own case. It is not very big. It's just the 2 services, the actual web service of ours, the service that we exposed, and the database deployer that we need for the HANA deployments itself. You have a couple of extra parameters. So these are the services, are the actual services that particular service of yours depends on. Something like memory limitations, for example, or the actual libraries that you need for building it. This one is Node.js, so this is the information of what exactly it is. And this is what's the location of the files. For us, it's always going to be generate folder and where we're going to put everything that the results of build. So let me just I didn't skip anything over here. Manifest YAML, Cloud Foundry push is always going to be the command where that we use for deployments. But let me see what else I want to specify over here. The destination service is something we covered a few moments ago. So if you remember, I was talking about destinations and why exactly we need those for productive versions of our own app, because we don't want to play with URLs around the code. The destination service itself, I've created that one a few moments ago. I think I've shown you how to create it. So if you go to Services Marketplace and you type destination, as always, you can do it through UI. You say create destination service. You have a different plan. For us, it's only like Cloud Foundry, DevSpace, and you use this particular name over here because it's not a single place where it appears it's used, and copy paste doesn't really work. Destination and then service, that's the name. So you can configure, of course, it says it already exists. You can, as always, specify JSON, just review if you have anything. All these two steps are, and for us, you're just filling the data over here and you're done. You can click create. You can do it that way, or you can do it through this command that you have in the PDF, as always, and it will create the destination service. Again, this is needed to talk to S/4HANA system for production, because next to all the other things that we discussed, destination service also assures that we communicate to external services in a secure way, so that security measures of BTP are, the security principles are followed, next to all the other things that we discussed with the destination service. So let us now mention this thing, the last service that we need for this step to deploy something with manifest YAML, authorization and trust management service. That's the last file that was added for it over here. Currently just an empty file. I think in this version, right? So why do we need this service? Probably because as again, when we were testing the application itself in local, I didn't really deal with things like authentication and authorization. That was my own test user, the same one that uses the Business Application Studio and its capabilities. So not much I had to do with authorization and authentication. In real life, of course, you have identity providers, you have user integration, and users have to be mapped between different systems. It's usually one system using the resources of the other system, so lots of security needs to be done in that story. I guess lots of you worked with security problems in authentication, authorization architectures and methodologies and frameworks in the past. For BTP, security is implemented through OAuth 2.0. So because as always, we have people sitting in this call who never had a contact with a certain technology. Let's say that OAuth is a protocol for the technology, which is quite standard in the market in the last, OAuth 2.0 is 10 years old. I think it's 2012. I'm not sure when version 1 appeared in the market. So it's in the industry for a very long time already. The idea of OAuth is basically that you have that one service, one application, wants to use resources of the other application on behalf of that other application's user, but the password of that user shouldn't be shared with the other app. So we have the let's say the client app, the one that wants to use resources, and the resource owner app that needs to give access to that resource on behalf of its own user. But the client app shouldn't be aware of the password of the actual user from the resource app. And that's where the OAuth fits in. So what's The idea is, okay, I mean, the problem is how to implement something like that and how to share the resource but not share the password. And then, of course, you have another authority over here, which is called authorization server. So what does the authorization server do? It basically, with many redirects, because you have that communication architecture and multiple redirects, but its single goal is to issue a token that to the client system that the resource owner system will trust. So both of them trust the authorization server of OAuth, and its only goal is to issue that token, and then the client system takes the token and gets to the resource owner and says, okay, here is my token, give me the resource. Because both of them trust the authorization server, the resource is assigned. Again, token has many specifics. It's not like it's not usable always and forever. It's just for a certain time, and it's not useful. It's not usable for everything. So it's not that if the client carries that token to the resource owner and gives it, like, it's not that he can get absolutely everything. The token has its scope, of course. So things like that are part of the token information the token carries. But that's the idea. You need the authorization server. And this is where Authorization and Trust Management Service steps in. It's exactly the authorization server for OAuth. So you need just to activate that component for your own app. Again, we're just talking about the most typical components that will appear as part of the cloud app. The cloud application programming model application. Where did I stop? Here. So authorization and trust management service. So if you say create, for the 100th times, we get a similar menu when we activate a service. And of course, it's always going to be the same menu. It's just a single menu. We need application mode for this one. And the instance name is going to be something like this: risk management, extended services, user, account, and authentication. So this one you use, and this is the exact line that you can use from the command line. If you don't want to use interface, again, you have it over here. So let me see what else I want to specify about the authorization and trust management component. We're not going to use any JSON, so we're not going to execute this one through UI. I already have that one running in the instance setting. It's over here. So let's see what else we have. The manifest file itself, you can add automatically, because if you remember, I've just shown you the manifest file, but I've shown you that one with some content, not because it just appeared for itself. It's because I've did the checkout a few moments before that, and the file came. The way you can do it another way to do it, the standard way would be that you just use the command cds add cf manifest, and then the manifest file gets generated out based on the content of the actual project. That's the idea of the CDS utility. You get it has package JSON and the project content. It's able to generate the file. So this is the way you do it. Now, of course, you remember that I've just said we have some in the manifest file. We had some actual executable libraries, right? And the build code or whatever is needed to be deployed to production. We store that one in the generated folder. This is where we specified over here. For this one, branches and multiple things. But the way that you generate those productive libraries and files, it's CDS build. Over here, the production was specified. So I think that I haven't shown you what we have in package JSON completely, because I missed this portion over here. So if you remember from package JSON, when we specified the external file, the external service, this was the one that we had a few moments ago. And this portion that we added now. So let's see what exactly is this thing over here. So we are introducing two different environments. that we use this application for. The one is for development and the one is for production, because you've seen that we use different things for production. With development, we again stay with using the URL directly because we care about the actual destination services. For the production environment, we're going to use the destination service itself. And this is the exact destination that I've created for you, that I've shown you a few moments ago. This particular one. So this is it. So now, when I want to do CDS build, I'm going to say I want to do CDS build, but for production. This one is getting completed pretty fast, and something, of course, this gets refreshed. And now in the Gen folder, I have everything I need for deployment. Data, source, like it branches further, like whatever is needed from the files. It's over here in the generated folder. The last step before I go with the deployment is that, if you remember, we had that environment file here that we're going to delete now, as I will not put the local environment anymore. The environment file was storing my own API key. Of course, I'm not going to deploy it that way to production. I don't want to play with my own credentials in the files and have that deployed. I'm going to use environment variables. So over here, in this specific example, it's the command Cloud Foundry set environment. And for this specific particular service, you set the API key and your own API key. You just execute that one and you have it ready in the environment, in the Cloud Foundry at the end. So this is how you get, like, how I set your Cloud Foundry. Here, exact command in the end, you deploy to Cloud Foundry with CF push. As I mentioned, I'm definitely not going to execute it now and wait for multiple minutes for that to get completed. CF push just completes the story for all the components that we prepared. This is it. We have something deployed to our own Cloud Foundry in our own dev space. As I mentioned already, it's located over here. If you go to Spaces and click to your actual dev space, you get all services deployed. They are listed over here. The two services of mine are stopped. But here is what I will get: risk management service and the deployer over here. Click on this link. When it's activated, it will take me to the app of my own. So let's check what else we have over here. The second thing that I wanted to cover is the second approach is the multi-target applications. So what is this one? It's basically this is something which is an SAP technology. So what are the multi-target applications? So let's put it this way, try to describe it this way. It's you're all quite used to the architectures which are quite standard in industry currently, with multiple loosely coupled small services running in separate component, all of them coded in different programming languages, using different technologies, and using different target platforms to where exactly they are deployed. And all those loosely coupled services, of course, that sounds like microservices, are component of a single app. And that's something which you quite often see in the market today. So the question appears, of course, like, what happens when you need to deploy an application like that? Just imagine all those multiple mini components. One written in Node.js, another one in Java, the other one being some web code portion, the third one is like some proprietary system. All that needs to be deployed. That's all a single app of yours. So either you make some long lists and do whatever is your approach, but if you deploy each of them separately, and how you make some order out of that whole, or you try to introduce some system that provides a single uniform approach and unites all those individual efforts that need to be done to have each particular component deployed. So what we can do, what we use in SAP in that case is something that we call multi-target applications. The name is quite self-explanatory, right? Multi-target, because each of those components gets deployed to a different target system, target technology, target infrastructure. So the question is now, of course, how exactly we do that. It's not that complex to understand from the top level. It's basically that you use those multi-target application descriptors, the files, which are similar like manifest file, but they just describe what the actual multi-target application itself does, like what are the individual components and what are the build packs that you need to use to get the executable libraries, and what are the dependencies and technologies that it uses, and what are the target platforms that we're deploying this to. So all that you just put in the manifest file, and you leave everything else to SAP. I don't know how it sounds to you, but you just describe something in a single YAML file, which is quite short, relatively quite short. So we can open that one to demonstrate a point. I think it should be 11 or 10. Manual, deploy using MTA. So the file appeared over here, MTA YAML. Didn't point that out. YAML is just another serialization format, similar as JSON. The difference from JSON is that this one is much more human readable. JSON is about brackets and something which is like a JavaScript object definition, while this one is quite human readable. So it uses indentations, and if it wants to have a list, an array, however you call it, it uses a syntax like this. So requires is a list of these individual elements. So it's quite easy for humans to read. Again, equivalent to JSON, but it takes more space, of course. So that's YAML, pretty often used in the industry. We used that one a few moments ago for manifest. We use it again for the multi-target archive. So over here we have description of what needs to be done. Each of the modules. So this is quite short, if you agree, and it's going to do the whole job for your deployment, because you will just describe what is the actual service that you're deploying, what is the actual technology that it uses, the language, the build packs that it needs to use, where the files are located, what are the services that it requires, and what are the outputs that it will give that other services inside of this architecture will use. For example, over here we have when our service gets deployed, it will get a URL that you cannot know in advance. So this thing, okay, so this is it will provide the URL for the service, and then that's a property, and you just use that one few steps below, just fine. How come I don't see that one? Let me see, because it should be used over here. Probably 11 when we get to that portion. I think it's used over there. We're going to get, yeah, right. That's when we add the operator and another component. We will use this specific parameter that is produced over here. So this file will change next checkout. Then we describe the components. We said this is like something we need for HANA deployments and resources that it uses. The point is you just describe the actual service that you're going to deploy, and you just say something like this. MBT build, again, MBT is a tool provided by SAP You have it inside of those extensions. You remember when we created the full stack cloud project yesterday, one of the extensions was the MTA tools, all the tools needed for multi-target applications. So one of them is this MBT thing. So that's a builder, MBT, and you say just build. This one shouldn't take too long. When it finishes, it will produce the actual archive that we need for deployment. The important thing is that you don't know what exactly is needed to deploy each of those technologies. What are the build packs? What are the commands? You just describe what you have in your package. You say MBT build, and cloud application programming model does everything for you. So you don't really care about Node.js, Java, ABAP, or whatever it is modules inside of it, about individual tools. The cloud application programming model knows how to do that. You just specify the actual components, describe it a bit, and everything else is done automatically. Let's just wait for this thing to finish. Takes some time, but when it ends, we'll get a single multi-target archive, that is used for deployment. When we get that one, everything you need to do is just to say Cloud Foundry, deploy, and just give URL toward the actual path toward the archive. And it gets, this is it, everything you need for the deployment. So now the archive is here. No, sorry, that's like from my own build yesterday. So this one is over here, multi-target archive. So MTR archives, multi-target, if you want to get it here, it's not double thing. It's what you get with this component MBT build. And then you say finish T, something like this. It will build, produce the same archive in the root folder over here, because it's a bit easier. You don't have to look for the actual path for the archive. Doesn't really matter wherever you want to place it, because in the other, just use the right path over here in this command. Let me see if I've skipped something. Shouldn't be any of those. So this is what we talked about. Theoretical things about Cloud Foundry, and I will leave it up to you to check details. So let's see what we have. Unit 6. So we're going to go through the Unit 6 relatively fast, then make a break, and after the break, we're going to talk about the actual organizational things. Everything else we need about this particular academy and the tests, important topics, because I want to be sure that we cover that one. And when we finish it, we're going to get back to the technical topics. The other ones will not be of that big priority, whatever time remains. Everything else you will easily pick up with learning journeys and all the other materials that I will give to you. The decks and the checkouts. So let's add a few more components over here. We're kind of preparing even more to have everything they put these four story here at this lesson, Unit 6. So restriction and roles. It's basically about I don't know how many details I mentioned that yesterday when I was showing you the cockpit, but it's not that when you are in when you work with BDP, of course, it's not that everybody can access everything. So you have users and role collections that you work with. So maybe that I just go to that part at first and give you that story, and then we get back to the roles. So how does that accessibility and permissions model work with BTP? Over here, the example of this particular object, article. So what's called scope is usually the right of some user to execute an action like create an article, or update an article, or delete an article. Those are all individual scopes. So we already see that this is like too granular. It's quite needed, right? But it's too granular for you to work. You're definitely not going to assign like for every user, for each object you have inside of BTP, your application, each individual action and assign rights for that. That's granular. We do scopes at any time. We group those in roles. So let's say that here you have a couple of examples, but it can be like a person that maintains articles, does all CRUD operations on the article, or the content creator or reviewer. So those are individual roles. So they collect a couple of related scopes and create something which is like, let's say, article maintainer, for example, role, or any of these. Again, this is too granular. You can work with these objects. You can use it for different purposes, but this is too granular. What we actually use in the end, what administrators use, it's collections. So we care about people who can administer, for example, specific objects or the whole group of objects, or execute whole tasks inside of the administration. We're not really going to play with like articles administrator and then administrator for every specific object in our system. We need something which is definitely of higher level. So here are some examples: admins and auditors. So those, the level of granularity for permissions is called role collection, and users are getting assigned to role collections. So that's how we do things in BTP, and that's done in an easy way over here. So for users, for yourself, here's my name. I click on that one, and I have role collections over here. So this one I need for continuous integration, continuous delivery. If that one is not present, then I use something which is like assign, CI, and then I tap in. Of course, it's not available over here. Those roles again are by well, let's not go that deep with the story. For us, it's going to be quite enough. The assigning of a role collection. For this place, one thing I want to point out over here is that it might happen, like that's what I've noticed, like when I assign a role for myself, let's say that continuous integration, continuous delivery, it takes some time that I get the actual service available available to instantiate and work with the service itself. The propagation takes some time. So that's what I've noticed with the system. So don't get surprised if you assign yourself a role and you cannot immediately do that. The propagation takes some time. So let's see what else I can point over here. Right, that's about the roles themselves. So let's now talk about the actual those authorizations and permission setup that we do in BTP. Through which exact type of users we do that. There are two major groups of users in BTP platform. We call them platform users and business users. So people who deploy, administer, troubleshoot, use some of the services that we dealt with, then execute different types of tasks inside of BTP platform. Those are platform users. We do not set permissions for those. So when we talk about role collections, so we do that to business users. Business users do a couple of things, but the main thing for us is that they are the actual end users of your apps. So both platform users and business users work with the app itself. It's just from a different perspective. This one resembles associated tasks, but like again, those tasks can be quite different because you've seen we do lots of different things inside of BTP. So all those different roles, like people develop something, then people activate services in the marketplace or make some sales related operations. So all that, there are many different tasks. So all those tasks belong to platform users. So however you call the administrator, then call administrator, but it's like it can be a coder also, and lots of different things. So we do role collections, assignments to business users. So here, like now it's like in the local. If I check out for 11, I'm going to quickly go over this because this one is something that you can really do on your own later on. It's checkout 11. No. Yeah, checkout 11. So let me see what I have over here. Obviously, a couple of branches, 2 of them. So restrictions and roles. So let me see what I have. I've a couple things over here in the. So those roles are defined at first for the local version of the file. So here in service CDS, we'll use the URL that's where we find the actual service. Here we have a couple of annotations that basically drive that permission setup for our application. It introduces a couple of roles, risk viewer, risk manager, and it says, okay, risk viewer can do read on risks, and risk manager can execute all operations for risks. The same thing for mitigations, and this is it. Permissions defined for my local over here. Good enough for my local purposes. Just 2 more things I have. It's just the definition of 2 users. So if I over here in CDS RC JSON file, I just remind you this is the file where you can define some project-related setup. It's in combination with package JSON. So this one over here, it's the 2 users that can be used for testing in this particular example. So this is just some actual users. So this guy's name is Risk Viewer, and this is his email, and this is the password that he uses. So those 2, that's the quick and easy way to define something for development. 2 users over here. So let me see if I've skipped something. It's just CDS watch, and I will try not to log in over here with this local user because I don't want to play with deleting cookies afterwards. It will be something like if I click on this, let me see where those permissions are located in this particular example. I think when I click go on that button, I want to try to get the list of risk objects. So here it is. Now I need to log in to access risks. But I'm not going to do that. So now because I want to progress further, I want to prepare this for the productive environment. So what do? It's like we talked about authorization and trust management service, and we're just going to add a couple of steps over here that we need, a couple of options. So git checkout 12, authorization and trust management. Let me see. Over here, it's I get 2 files, XS, security JSON. That's the file that, if you pay attention a bit closer, bears the same information that one that we had in the CDS file over here. So this one, of course, you got with a git checkout, but you can also generate it with, I think the command is given over here, right? So this done. If you run this command from the window, the command window from the terminal, you will get this file generated out of package JSON and the definition of project, the definition of the service, right? So we had it over here. It's mostly what we had in the CDS. So this is the file, again, our service, if you remember, we are deploying, then the scopes that we define, role template, because we want to do role collections. It's all defined over here. And Let me see if something else changed. In MTA YAML, because I want to deploy that authorization and I want to deploy authorization trust management service. So here is the name of another service that we're going to deploy. It's exactly of this type that I mentioned, extended services, account authentication, things like plan, where exactly is the path, where's the description, it's access security JSON, it's over here. This is some like unique things like space as the actual space name can be added over here to be used as the name over here, and two role collections and a couple of definitions over here that we have added for deployments. So now I have everything that I need to deploy this to productive environment in Cloud Foundry. So I'm not going to use the roles that I have in local. Again, you've used to that as part of this exercise, we're preparing things differently for production, a bit more complex. So now I have everything which is needed. I can say that I'm not sure why CDS watch is needed here. When we deploy this, and there's another step, we need to add app router before the actual deployment, which we do not execute it anyways. CDS watch, I don't think it's needed over here. It's not local. It's probably just some main that state. So it's not testing. The thing is that when I have this deployed, so I will not log in a pop-up as I did a few moments ago in a local. So the simple thing I will do is that I will go to users, to my own particular user. I will assign these roles that we were dealing with over here, risk manager or risk viewer, and I will have access to my own app. That's the point. This is what we were doing, right? We deploy a couple of roles, and actually we're just going to assign those if we want to have those roles, if we want to have the components of the system visible. Okay, the last portion before we go to the break, the app router. So what is app router actually? We need to add another component in our architecture. So that's because for this example, we are listing basically all the, let's say, all in the most typical components of a cloud application programming model, definitely not all systems that could be used. So what is app router? Well, basically with the actual filtering that gets done on the port, you have a pretty good firewall toward your system, so not everything can get to your system. But again, you need to have some gate in that firewall, so people need to talk to your system, and you need some security gate which checks who exactly can access resources of our app and which resources it's authorized to use, and maybe authorize that guy, trigger the procedure that will authorize that guy to access some resource if he accesses the system for the first time. And it also needs to do some things like it can do like routing of your requests, because depending on what exactly you've put in that URL, the app router decides to which exact resource of the system your request needs to be forwarded. So you just use a single address, the end users, the actual business users who type some address to browser, they use the app router address, and then they specify other portions of the URL of that path. So depending on what the other portion is, app router decides where exactly to forward that request. So here you have a couple of examples. What we did inside our own app, we had the UI, the Fiori application. We call it over here static resources, the HTML pages. That can be the request that somebody can have. Like it's like the end user using the classic the app in the standard way through UI. It can be somebody trying to access the actual backend or data service for some purpose. What you see on the left side, that's the component that we just built a few moments ago. It's the OAuth token, the actual server that provides tokens over here. Standard component of OAuth architecture. When the user logs in for the first time, then the app router might decide that he needs to send that user to the actual authorization server, UAA over here, and needs to trigger the login procedure. And then what happens? It's like that like complicated nexus of redirections as part of OAuth. The authorization server can forward that request to the identity provider to get the user logged in. Then when the identity provider checks this is where the user gets the URL page of the identity provider, and that's where user will type in his password. When identity provider makes sure that the password is correct, then it returns the call toward UAA, the authorization server, and says, okay, now you give me the token for this guy, because this guy needs to access the OData service. The token gets issued, the token gets redirected back to the app router, and the app router says, okay, here's your token. Now I'm sending you with this token to the specific CAP OData service. So that's the role of app router. All those things that we listed now, that's what app router does. Again, that's with a CAP model and with the microservices and loosely decoupled small components of the system. App router is just another service that you implement, just another Node.js module. And this is how we implement it over here. So with CAP, it's a specific library, specific Node.js module that we have in the NPM. You use that one and you just create another service and you deploy that one as a specific component of your system, because that's just another box over here. Let me see what we have. Again, read doesn't react very well to clicks, so let me see what else we have. Checkout number 13, this is what we're going to do. Git checkout 13. App router, and here we have components. App router was added like what? It's a separate Node.js project inside of this Node project hours. So it's like package.json over here. Let's see what it does. Package.json. Test app router. This is the module. Oh, interesting. Oh, here it is. This is what I was looking for. The dependency. SAP app router. So this is the actual Node.js module published by SAP to the NPM repository. We use that one. You just add dependency. You have a separate Node.js project over here because your app router is going to be a separate service. So we're going to deploy that one separately. We'll just use it over here. And what we modified is the CDS watch is definitely not something that we need over here. So just remember, this shouldn't be over here. You don't test it locally. What else? We just did it out. Otherwise, you would do npm init to initiate a new project if that's how you like to do it, like to get the bare bone structures. Package JSON is what. No, not just that one, not this one. I don't think this one changed. Right, it's just this package JSON. And this is the file that basically kind of a manifest file for the app router component. The important things are these two. These are two routes, to the specific routes, the same ones that we saw a few moments ago, the one toward the OData services, another one toward the app itself. This one says, okay, if part of your URL is app, then we send you with authorization to the local to the actual pages, resources, static HTML pages, and this one uses the destination service. because you want a service, then we send you to the destination. So this is just a way to specify two different routes. Again, just memorize XS app JSON is a manifest file for the app router itself. I'm just waiting for the portion where I get the manifest, right? The deployer file, the deployment descriptor modified. So I just want to see the multi-target over here. So where's the? Let me just find it. Seems like a separate checkout, right? 14. So this is what I was missing. Get checkout 14. And it just appeared over here. So the XUA. No, wait. Where is the app router? It went to the top. App router is over here. Node.js project. And this is going to be the path for the service. So everything is going to get to the app router. Requires these services. If you remember, I mentioned about that services URL from our own service, which is the output parameter of that one above. So now we just use it. Here we use it. For which purpose we use that one? Well, for the requests that needs to be forwarded toward the service. Couple of basic information about the app router as part of the manifest, and we also deploy that one. So now you're ready for another deployment where you try to run this exercise on your own. You will again do the PT build, so you get everything prepared, and then just deploy the multi-target archive cloud phone. I wouldn't want to spend any more time over here, so we're going to do a break. So let's meet like 6:18 now. Grab some refreshments, buy a break, and we have to do the summary we discuss all important organizational topics. I will give you the links again and everything after the break, and CI/CD is just another like unit over here that stays for you to check it out with the PDFs. So like 10 or 12 minutes of break, guys. Let's meet you at 6:30 a.m. I'm over here. Thank you.
Recording stopped.